All right, welcome back to a very special episode of Dr. J Radio Live. Today we are going inside Countdown to Disclosure, the documentary that's hit many streaming services and is literally breaking records in 2021. Now, I bring you the producers, the directors, the creators, the writers, the editors, everything that's ever been done with this documentary was made by two brothers, the Cousins brothers, Blake and Brent Cousins, who are my mentors, my friends. In fact, I wouldn't be Dr. J if it wasn't for them 8.5 years ago, almost 9 years ago. I'd be John the lawyer. So without further ado, let me introduce the one and only, or two and only, Blake and Brent Cousins brothers. Blake and Brent, welcome to the show.
Hey, hey, Dr. J, good to be with you, man. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How you doing in Hawaii?
Oh, aloha from Hawaii. The weather's excellent. Actually, we just had a power outage about an hour ago. We had some heavy winds, but we just got lucky enough, and now we're here talking to Dr. J with the power back on. So we're pretty stoked down here.
It's almost like fate. And speaking of fate, that reminds me that when Countdown to Disclosure, when, we were first discussing the documentary and you guys were putting it together, you created this title before the relief bill that actually has the real Countdown to Disclosure. So it's kind of like real world is mimicking what you've already created. What would you say in response to that?
It's not the first time, Dr. J. When Thirdphasofmoon, the Cousins brothers, we come up with concepts. We put out original new ideas, content, breaking the news. Obviously, the world's watching, and they like to emulate what's breaking on Thirdphasofmoon. And when I heard that 2 days after we dropped the trailer, Countdown to Disclosure, and then we saw that there was a government countdown to disclosure, and then the New York Post posted the countdown to disclosure, 180 days to UFO disclosure. I realized, look, these guys are mimicking, following Thirdphasofmoon very closely. It didn't surprise me in the least, but it's a good thing. It's getting the conscious out, and this countdown to disclosure that's happening within our government coming up in about a little less than 100 days, I think, or so, that every time people are going to look into that, they're going to refer back to our documentary, Countdown to Disclosure, the secret technology behind the Space Force. And by the way, it's incredible to note that we were ranking in a way that was pretty impressive for an independent documentary just made by two guys, Blake and Brent Cousins, right here at Thirdphasofmoon. But now we're seeing it rank among the biggest documentaries on the planet right now. And we just took the third spot on iTunes, beating out some of these documentaries that were just released. And I got a feeling it's going to take and jump to number one. But right now, number three, and we had an incredible opening weekend. People are hungry for this kind of information and Countdown to Disclosure. I think we give it to them. People are walking away feeling satisfied, feeling that they've learned something, and the reviews are off the hook in regards to Countdown to Disclosure, the secret technology behind the Space Force. We're hearing the comments, the public, and, it's exciting. A lot of information in this documentary.
When I first heard that you were actually breaking the records and, of course, trying to find some imagery for the thumbnail, I noticed you were trending on Twitter, on Reddit, literally, Countdown to Disclosure. There is a Reddit, people chatting about it. So that's pretty amazing that it actually made it up there and is trending, too. Now, let's talk about some of the stars in it, without revealing what they really say so people have an incentive to go see it. But you got people like Bob Lazar, Jim Goodall, Dr. Stephen Greer, Paul Blake Smith, Michio Kaku, Michael Sala. How did you get such an all-star cast together?
Well, we wanted to do it in a record-breaking time. We were going through this, this past year, unprecedented. Everybody had to be distant, and to pull off a documentary in the middle of all this was a little complex. But in order to pull it off, we had to make these connections with the people that you just mentioned. And when we told them what our goal was, what our subject matter would be in regards to this technology behind the Space Force and what's going on in regards to this technology not being given to the public, we mentioned this to Greer, to Sala, to the panel, the people that are participating in the documentary, and they realized we were onto something, and we were going to get it out as fast as possible. So when we reached out to Dr. Greer, we were lucky enough to have a conversation. He was a little hesitant in the beginning, but I gave him a little rough cut of what we're working on. he took a look at it. I let him know, like, look, Dr. Greer, Third Phase Moon's been helping you out over the years. And, you've seen a lot of reciprocal action due to Third Phase of Moon getting the word out on Dr. Greer. So when he finished this documentary, he actually said that I've never done a favor for anybody like that in my entire life. And what I just gave you, you can make a full documentary on it. And he was exactly right. We were lucky enough to get him in Los Angeles for an 1.5-hour window of opportunity. And we were able to nail it with our questions that we knew what we were going to give him. And we knew he was going to be explosive with his answers back. And he delivered 100%. Michael Sala, again, we were lucky enough to get in contact with him, meet him in person, interview him in person on location. And it was kind of the first stages of Countdown to Disclosure, building this structure behind the final project. And what he said in regards to some secret whistleblower about the technology of this Tic Tac, and revealing to us that this Tic Tac isn't otherworldly. It's reversed from otherworldly technology, but it's ours now, and we're controlling it, and we know exactly what it is. And what this is some kind of faction of intelligence that's experimenting their aircraft with Navy pilots. So when we hear that in this world where major media says UFOs are a threat, and we're blaming it on other countries, in fact, we know exactly what it is, and it's not a threat to us, but it definitely is something that Dr. Greer brings up, that there could be a dangerous element in regards to this, Tic Tac technology of an object traveling at 30,000 miles an hour, and if it could be used as a projectile. This is all covered in Countdown to Disclosure. Now, and thanks to you, Dr. J, you brought some people to the table too.
Thank you very much. As a matter of fact, that's right. You have Michio Kaku in there, that portion of the interview I did with him this past summer. And if you recall during that interview, I've never heard him actually say that until this interview, that he actually thought that these are extraterrestrial drones. So he took that stance. Now, do you think that it is possible that this is not necessarily our technology that's reverse engineered by spacecraft or extraterrestrials or extra dimensionals, but it's maybe possibly them?
Well, that's the big question, right? And after people watch Countdown to Disclosure, the secret technology behind the Space Force, I think people are going to walk away and kind of have a bigger picture of this whole aspect of what really is disclosure, and they're going to wrap their brain around it and have a little bit of satisfaction knowing that we've kind of answered some of the questions they've always wanted to know. Whether we're alone, is this technology being utilized, who's using it, where is it being built, and some of the theories of the great minds, like when you were able to ask on our behalf to Michio Kaku about this technology, and he said it could be actually extraterrestrial in origin, but he also says that it could be just some other faction, some black ops government working on this technology. It's one or the other, but we know exactly what it is.
Speaking of black ops technology, the number one name when it comes to UFOs with black ops is Bob Lazar. And you managed to get a line from him which nobody can get these days. And I mean, I'm actually surprised other people have tried to get, and I know he made a documentary about a year or two ago, but outside of that, for couple decades, he's pretty much remained silent. What was the insight when you first got Jim Goodall to call Bob and you guys were recording that?
Yeah, good question. And yeah, you're exactly right. Bob Lazar isn't one to just readily give interviews. And, I think you've tried for years to get him on your show. We were lucky enough to have some connections. And when the story came up in the New York Times about off-world vehicles recovered, not of this earth, and it was breaking news at that moment, we're like, I sure would like to know what Bob Lazar has to say. So believe it or not, within an hour of just that thought of having an idea of getting Bob Lazar on, we had him within an hour. We got the interview. So it was kind of manifested in the idea of getting Bob Lazar in this documentary. And all we had to do, we called up Doc Skinner. We said, hey, look, we want to get Bob Lazar, his reaction to this. Do you have any idea? Then he says, well, there's this guy standing next to me that's a good friend of Bob Lazar. His name's Jim Goodall. And he passed the phone off to us. I talked to Jim, and I told Jim, give Bob a call, ask him these questions about what his reaction is to this off-world vehicle story coming out of the New York Times. And a few minutes later, Jim Goodall got Bob on the phone, and we got this exclusive cut that's in the film. It's interesting to hear what Bob has to say about that. And, it was an incredible just coincidence, an idea that we made happen within an hour. And we have the Bob Lazar cut on Countdown to Disclosure. And interesting to hear what he has to say about the news that's happening now. Not old news, not history, but what's going on right now on our planet.
The interesting thing you said is what the New York Times, when they released that an off-world, I believe what they said, not space vessel, off-world vehicle not from this earth. And of course, that's when Bob Lazar reacts that he's not going to do his happy dance yet. But the very next day, they retract that statement. Oh, I mean, how could you even get to the point of getting to the editing room and to get that in a major international newspaper, New York Times, and then very next day release some or take back some of the words like off-world and not from this earth, and basically kind of muddy the water a bit. What do you think that attempt was? Do you think that was an attempt at disclosure, or do you think that was someone messing up and the person who was above them yanking him back?
I think it's kind of like what Bob states in the documentary, which was surprising to me, that he had insight on exactly what was going to happen with this New York Times story. And what's interesting to me is, like you said, they retracted the story the next day, and they said they misrepresented some of the information that they had. But how could you misrepresent that kind of language? Off-world vehicles not recovered, not of this earth. You don't just make that stuff up. That was specific language. They wouldn't have put it out there unless that's what they heard. And to come out the next day and say, nope, we got it wrong, it just smells of 1947 all over again, the biggest cover-up that we've had. And this, I think that day was one of the other bigger cover-ups, because we were expecting at that moment that we were going to see something. We were going to see this craft if it was going to be out in the open. The New York Times opened the story up, but as we all know, they backtracked, and it was a sad day for ufology and for the rest of the world, because it seemed like something was just right around the corner. And the New York Times is involved in some kind of cover-up, in my opinion, on that story.
One of the greatest things is, while this movie has been released, we are literally in the midst of a UFO wave. This isn't a gull. This is actually a huge, massive international wave of people all across the globe, as seen on your channel, Third Phase of Moon, every single day. Some of the greatest footage I've ever seen and the world has ever seen, ever. And you literally get so many people sending you footage every day that you have to literally pick and choose. And what would you say is the percent that you can't actually make to the channel because you have that much content?
We get a lot of content, Dr. J, as well as you know, and a lot of it really doesn't make it to Third Phase of Moon. And we do that because we want to spare our viewers videos that really are non-compelling. What we want to show is something that's compelling, something that's unidentified, something that's super unusual, something that you really don't see every day. So again, we see videos of people that are shooting like an individual light in the dark sky, and all we're seeing is just a white dot. And these are not videos you will see. And we get a ton of these things, but every once in a while we get, well, quite a bit. We get some great stuff, and that's why we're the top UFO channel on the planet, just due to the fact of the massive amount of information and contacts we have and people who want to share their videos with us. But what's crazy, too, is that you're right. We're breaking the news almost every single day, and then the news will follow up on our breaking news, just as we did 24 hours ago when we released the exclusive audio that Jim Goodall gave us via the American Airlines pilot having a close encounter with a cylindrical object that passed over his commercial airliner which he said it resembled a cruise missile. But in my opinion, I go with his first statement. He says, I hate to say this, but there's this cylindrical object that just passed over us. He would have just said cruise missile in the beginning, but he didn't. He said cylindrical object. Then he went to the word cruise missile. This does not sound a little wacky, but you could hear it in his voice. He was concerned. And then the major media picks up on it, 12 hours after we put the story out first. Do you see the major media news ever give Third Phase of Moon credit for breaking this stuff? Why don't they, I wonder?
I know. It actually boggles my mind. I know for a fact that Tucker Carlson and crew are paying very close attention to the channel. It sort of blows my mind that they haven't reached out yet. Maybe it will in 100 days like we're planning. I mean, I don't know, but you're absolutely right. It very well seems that the world is watching Third Phase of Moon. It is the world's largest UFO YouTube channel, and you post literally daily news. Now, speaking of that pilot, that saw that yesterday, if you recall, the portion that I recorded for you was that the fact that pilots generally get scolded. They lose their wings. They're called drunks or delusional for reporting this. If you recall that in the 80s, the Japan Airlines pilot literally almost lost his job. I don't know what happened after he got years and years and years of ridicule over this, but it seems that we're now in a new era where it's more acceptable to talk about these topics than it was ever before.
Well, I have to agree with you. There is a paradigm in the consciousness of this field that we're in and the information behind it. But again, we're seeing people in your chat today, right now as the chat's going, and I could see Paper Crane Wishes says that American Airlines UFO story is everywhere now. But Paper Crane Wishes heard it on Third Phase of Moon first, and that's absolutely right. The world is watching. They're not going to give Third Phase of Moon the credit where it's deserved, but the people around the world understand where they're going to get their news before anybody else. And I think there might be a turn. Let's just see this countdown to disclosure. If it does what it's supposed to do, and it gets to number one, there should be some kind of major media at least reach out to Third Phase of Moon to discuss why is this documentary number one, and not just pass it off as with not even covering something that's a major news story, number one documentary in regards to UFOs, in regards to technology, in regards to the Space Force. The major media, I think, will be bound to cover it once we hit number one, and I got a feeling that's going to be coming around in the next few days here.
Hey, that's exactly what I was just about to say, too, is that they cannot ignore you. Once you get to number one, you have to, the media is going to want to cover you because they cannot cover the movie without covering you guys as people and the creators of it. So, I mean, it would kind of be silly to reference the movie without having the producers, the creators, the writers involved in it. And so I think it's going to happen, like you said, whether it be a couple of days, like I said, before, right prior to us starting here, trying to grab some images, I was just blown away. I'm not surprised at all. I know this was going to be a hit from the beginning, watching each, I guess you could say, edition before you actually made the final cut, which each time was more and more amazing to me, and the final product still is. The one other thing I wanted to ask you too is about the technology. Some people argue that artificial intelligence is something that we should fear, that the singularity, when artificial intelligence literally becomes as intelligent as us, is coming pretty much around the corner. I think the year they estimate is about 2045 or so, but other way, it's going up exponentially. Now, if that Tic Tac does not have a human pilot or an extraterrestrial pilot, but if it's Earth-based alien reproduction vehicle, is the pilot is an actual AI if it's not controlled by someone that could be like a predator drone where you're in Nevada flying a drone across the world and over a rock. But here, do you think it's possible that the Tic Tac over the USS Nimitz had a mind of its own, or do you think there was a power somewhere else, maybe on another naval ship controlling it?
That's a great question. I think whatever this craft is and its metapropulsion attributes is something that is being controlled. Whether this Tic Tac is unmanned and it's not being operated by human? That's a big question and something we can't answer. But in my opinion, the technology of this metapropulsion and the shielding around the Tic Tac in order for it to travel through water at 500 miles an hour and take these sharp turns without collapsing on itself proves to me, in my opinion, that it would be capable of holding human in there, and they would be able to withstand some of the pressures just due to the fact they're in their own environment within the Tic Tac. And it could be controlled by a possible another source, like you say, from another battleship, maybe from all the way from Palmdale, California. We don't know, but I know that our people, there's people in the United States and there's private corporations that have this technology. They own it. They're looking at it right now. They're testing it. And again, just with our breaking news with the American Airlines pilot, with his statements, to me, I think that was basically a Tic Tac sighting. He described it dead on, but then he wanted to cover it up with a cruise missile. But it's interesting to note that he did say cylindrical. So I think they're being operated probably remotely, and they're just testing what they can do. Some people say if anybody has this kind of power and this kind of technology, that they pretty much could dominate the world in power just with this technology and say, hey, look, we control the airspace. Don't mess with us. We can do whatever we want. If you mess with us, we could see you in about, 20 minutes anywhere in the world kind of thing. And then, pretty incredible technology. And I'm thinking that's one of the reasons why they do keep it secret, just because, they don't want other countries feeling intimidated, and they don't want to admit that it's ours, but they want to blame it on other countries, which is a perfect diversion.
It's kind of always been that way. As a matter of fact, one of the popular skeptics' rebuttal of Roswell was that there were no extraterrestrial bodies. It was not a flying saucer. It was not a UFO. What it was a Soviet basically flying saucer built with propulsion that we know, and what they took was genetically modified children to fly the craft. Now that doesn't sound right to me, but I think it's Annie Jacobsen has been floating around that rumor for a couple years, and it kind of originated from someone close to S4. I don't know the source. I'm sure Jim Goodall could talk about that, but the point I'm getting at is that the use of blaming a UFO sighting or a Tic Tac or a TR-3B, for instance, on, say, Germany or South Korea or whatever it be, has been something we've been deploying for at least a century, if not even before that. I mean, I've heard of cases in the late 1800s where they would see a craft and they would think it was a train from the West Coast, for instance. So it seems to be that the policy of the book. Now, I also gather that policies have been changing. What do you think has marked this whole campaign? Because obviously it wasn't just the moment you made the documentary and the relief bill that put this out there, but it was more so even that prior to that, we've had that culture of finally getting open. And I was starting to wonder if it was because people that were involved have finally died off. Do you think there is a new group that's controlling this technology here on Earth that's under Black Ops? Or do you think that we're finally going to know what the Tic Tac was? I mean, what do you expect we're going to get at the end of June?
We're going to keep a close eye on it, but my best expectations is we're going to get absolutely zero information in the countdown in 100 days via the government's countdown to disclosure. You're going to get more information in our documentary than what we're going to hear in 100 days from them. Unfortunately, we already know the narrative, and we've kind of proved it by proof of concept by reaching out to the major media. We've asked you to do it. We said, Dr. J, you call up the LA Times. Rich from Goofon, call up the New York Times. I'll call all the major media networks that I could get in touch with. And we wanted to tell them and show our evidence that we're receiving from the public. And they pretty much don't want to touch anything that comes from the public. They only want to deal with military testimony, military evidence, and they're missing a major opportunity, not taking where the major information is from the public. And I think their narrative is set. They want to create this false narrative of a threat, and it sells weapons. It makes wartime a little bit more profitable, I guess, if you're going to have to protect yourself against a threat that doesn't exist. So I got to feel we're not going to find out too much, but who knows? We might be working on our sequel, Countdown to Disclosure. We don't know the underscore name on it yet, but we're going to be following it real close. What's going to be happening in the next 100 days?
I would be really, really amazed if that documentary would be set to earmark to be released for July, right after this 100 days is up. That way we can compare the two documentaries, the one that would come next and the one that's out now, literally breaking records around the world with what's actually happening around the world. So I kind of hope that's the case, but I guess only time will tell, since I think you planned on releasing this a little earlier, but it was out of your control, right?
Absolutely. It takes a while to distribute, get the whole movie ingested into all platforms, and streaming it on a day that we set to premiere. It really takes a lot of time, but we were able to accomplish it, get it among all the other major Hollywood movies and documentaries, and hang there at the top with just the two brothers putting this together. It really says something. People are hungry for this information, but what we pulled off in this movie is pretty exciting on how we were able to do it. But again, we're trying to get the word out. Look at all the videos that you're showing right now on this show that we're on, with some of the information, these videos captured by the public, and the major media doesn't want to touch this stuff. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, that's why I think things really are changing. Now, because Bob Lazar was on the phone with Jim Goodall, and you essentially got Jim Goodall to ask something and get that recording, hypothetically, if Bob Lazar agreed to an interview with you for the documentary that is out right now, and you got more than the statement that he is, what would the follow-up question would have been?
The follow-up question, I think, would have been, it would have been great to talk to him the next day when we all found out that the New York Times retracted the story, because what he says in the documentary, he pretty much told the future. And it was amazing to me. So I'd ask him, like, how did you know that they were going to cover this story up? What kind of intel did you have? Is there some kind of protocol that what the New York Times did, that they broke it, they destroyed this protocol, and Bob Lazar knows something about if there is going to be any disclosure, it's not going to be that way. And he realized pretty early on that the New York Times wasn't going to let it stand the way it is how he claimed it. So I don't know. It seems like Bob knew some things that foretold the future. So I would ask Bob, like, look, how did you know that? How did you know they were going to retract this? And if we were ever to get Bob Lazar in a documentary, I wouldn't do a Bob Lazar historical tale. That's already been done. What I would want to ask him is, like, what's going on now, some of the things what's going around on this Tic Tac, any ideas where it's built, some of the statements about the technology behind it. I'm sure he'd have a lot of things to say, but his story's kind of been told, but
Yeah.
It was great to bring him in on a relevant story that's happening at the moment instead of a historical piece. We kept it what I would say, relevant to the time.
I'm actually really glad you said that, because the Bob Lazar story has been told time and time and time again. Every time I've had John Lear on, even Jim Goodall touched on it. I mean, I can't imagine how many people I've talked where the same story was covered. And I know Jeremy Kenyon Lockyer Corbell, the one who produced the last documentary, but I have to say, I didn't learn anything different in that last documentary a couple of years ago. That statement you got with Jim Goodall from Bob Lazar was probably more news that I've heard from Bob Lazar in decades, literally. I mean, that is not a flat statement. That is literally truth. And that's why I thought it was so amazing that you were able to get him and feature it. And I'm sure a lot of people are writing in the comments that whatever you're able to see, whether it be Reddit or on your own channel or wherever you're else talking about it, that the people are remarking on that. How has the reception been to the Bob Lazar part?
Well, the overall reception is huge. Just people, they don't really comment on Bob specifically. They just comment on the whole aspect and the information that they gained from it. But it's interesting to note that when we put this documentary out, there was a lot of low expectations, I could say, about the movie. But we knew from showing you the cut, showing some of our friends the final rough cut, that what you told us is this is going to be the biggest documentary you ever made. And I was thinking, we're always kind of humble that way. We don't want to jinx things, but it's pretty humbling to see ourselves, in a way, trending the way it is across the United States and getting a lot of momentum, taking over on the charts. And it's pretty crazy, man. It blows us away. We're just stoked that we're going to be able to make another sequel on this because we know people are interested, and they received our product and took it in, and they're very complimentary of it. As far as other things that was pretty amazing in this documentary is Jim Goodall. He does an interview with us in the documentary, but he also supplied us some incredible paperwork from a signed letter from Ben Rich, the former
Skunk
president
Works.
of Lockheed Skunk Works. And this paperwork that was given to Goodall basically proves that Ben Rich knows that there's UFOs, and the ET, we could send ET home, is what he told Jim Goodall. So pretty much, if the president of Lockheed Skunk Works is saying that we know that there's UFOs and we can send ET home, I think there's already an answer there. Why would he say that to Jim? Why would he just pull his leg? He said it because he's a good friend of his, and he wanted to tell him this.
You're absolutely right, and more so, let's not forget that Ben Rich also stated to a group of UCLA, believe they were master's students in the engineering department, when he came to give a speech. At the very end, there was a picture of a flying saucer, and he essentially said exactly what you said. We have the technology to take ET home, but then he followed it up by saying, we have more technology in the Nevada desert that would make George Lucas envious. Now that, I think, is pretty amazing. Now both the brothers, Blake and Brent, both of you being Star Wars fans, how did you feel knowing that Ben Rich actually said the technology that we possess now would make George Lucas envious? So if everything you saw in Star Wars can be done and then more, how mind-blowing is that for you?
Well, it pretty much confirmed a lot of things as we're making this documentary, that we realized that there is a false narrative, there's a media biasness to this field, and then to hear Ben Rich say that out of Jim Goodall's mouth and those incredible statements pretty much confirms to me that what we suspected all along. We have this technology, and sometimes I really don't care if it's from another world or not. I just want my goddamn Millennium Falcon.
yeah, that's true. You remember when that Baltic Sea, whatever it was at the bottom that they said looked like the Millennium Falcon? I'm questioning whether the idea that George Lucas based the design off of, was it based off of something in reality? Because we do know that Hollywood movies mimic reality, not the other way around. For decades, skeptics have been saying that the reason we see gray aliens is because Hollywood brought that into our mind. Well, it's actually the opposite. The only reason Hollywood is making little green men or big size heads with large teardrop black eyes, gray skin, is because that is what people have been reporting. So it's very correlated in that sense. Now, there are two questions I'm going to get to. First, there are two from Lasha Senyek. First one is, what makes them think for sure it was not a natural phenomenon, the Tic Tac thing?
Well, let me just, one quick note. I just want to say you're right about this Hollywood emulating real life. George Lucas actually said, make the Millennium Falcon look like a flying saucer. So it wasn't a coincidence. And it's kind of interesting that he made Chewbacca look like a Bigfoot, which is kind of interesting. But as far as that question, Lasha is asking if I think that this Tic Tac could be just a natural phenomenon.
Yeah, exactly. That's what she's asking.
Yeah, absolutely not. I don't think there's nothing natural about it. I think there's high technology. We know where it's built. We kind of know the specific technologies behind it via Michael Sala's information. There's some supercavitation technology behind it that protects the craft. Definitely not natural, in my opinion.
The other question I see here is, have you boys ever done a doc on USOs, or are you going to? Very fascinating stuff, she says.
Well, absolutely. Third Phase of the Moon, we're putting out documentaries every day covering UFOs, USOs in its own Third Phase of the Moon format. But pretty soon, we will be going on the road, and this is something I'm telling the public for the first time, is that Brent and I are going to be traveling across the country starting here pretty soon. And we're going to be going state to state. We're going to track a lot of the people that have submitted UFO videos to us, interview them on location, do some investigation on the ground of the exact location it was filmed, and see if we could find any trace evidence. And we're also going to announce, as we're on the road, to everybody that we will be coming to the state. And if they want to reach out to us with some new evidence, we could maybe meet up with them. And we're also going to be going to symposiums throughout the country as we go, and letting everybody be informed of where we're going to be next. And we'll be doing symposiums, showing new evidence, and we'll be documenting all this pretty much daily on Third Phase Moon. But we also will be working on an incredible documentary on this whole road trip of ufology across America. Maybe that's the title, Ufology Across America. How's that sound?
I like it. I actually do like it. When do you plan to start this, or is it just waiting for things to be available to go?
Well, we expect that we'll probably be starting this when kind of the weather isn't so cold. We're Hawaii guys. We're kind of wimpy about cold weather. So when things start to warm up, but I imagine in a couple months we'll set out, and then we'll be traveling for 2 months straight. So it'll be an incredible adventure. We're looking forward to it, and we're going to meet a lot of people. We're going to get a lot of information, and who knows, when you start getting on this road trip and start letting the public know, people are sharing with us really sensitive information, just like how we broke the FAA story captured by this ham radio operator of this pilot encounter, and we were able to break it within an hour to the world. It's incredible lightning in the bottle, speed of light information coming to the people. And I got a feeling when we're on this road trip, we might come across something that we totally didn't expect that could blow everything wide open. We're going to search for it. It's going to be out there. The only way we're going to find it is we just got to go and do it. And it's going to be exciting. And Dr. J, you're more than welcome to come on this road trip with us. And it's going to be a crazy Third Phase of the Moon team trip.
I have a few amazing places we can go to, and I'm hoping that we could kind of get some tangible evidence that a few people have offered, but we never really had a chance to get. If you recall, Clifford Stone was going to show us something that was buried near his property. Unfortunately, he recently passed, I heard, so that's out of the option.
Oh,
but
no.
the point is, though, is if he had something, a lot of other people have something. To the Stars Academy has something because Linda Moulton Howe sold it to them. Art Bell gave Linda Moulton Howe a couple things that he'd received. A few fragments of these meta materials are around the world. So I would be fairly sure that as investigators and filmmakers and the only people really staying relevant every day, showing the world the evidence of what's happening that the mainstream is not covering, I would think that someone would hand over you something that was, say, hidden in their great-grandfather's or great-grandmother's possessions from, say, the 40s or something like that. So that would be something amazing that I would expect to happen in this trip.
Absolutely, and it's happening even now, but I got a feeling it's going to accelerate once we get on the road trip. But, yeah, recently we did a story on Third Phase of the Moon in regards to a photograph that was taken in the 1970s. The person that took it passed away. His grandson inherited his stuff. He was going through his photos, and he came across this incredible anomaly that was captured out of a commercial airliner, and we shared that. I think a lot of people have this evidence that they keep tucked away. They don't know who to share it with. There's protocols on how you want to get the information out, and I want to urge people that when we get the information, we put it out super quick. That's to protect the source who captured it. It's to protect us, too, because once we get the information, it's easy to snuff it out. But if we could get it out quick enough and then get it out to the world, then it's unleashed and you really can't stop it at that point. So I think we've got kind of this template which works well.
You do. You absolutely do, because staying relevant and releasing something, having time of the essence matter when you're releasing something is a big deal in journalism, because if you don't cover news, someone else will, and then they're no longer news at that point. It's old news, if that's even a word, because how can you have old and new combined? You can't. So essentially something that had already happened, had already been covered. If someone beat you to it, well, then you have to move on to the next thing. Now, there are a couple more comment or questions that popped up here. Let me ask them to you. Let's see here. Rockstar asks, will you be looking at abductions?
Oh, we'll definitely be covering abductions. We don't want to cover exclusive abduction case files, but if they have some evidence that goes along with that, I think that's more relevant. Maybe they might have an implant. Maybe you could see some of their x-rays, study that. Maybe we could even hang out with them if it's on an ongoing basis. Like, I think there's this one ranch. What's this ranch called? It's not
Stardust
Skinwalker Ranch.
and Skinwalker.
Stardust Ranch.
Yeah.
We might have to go check out Stardust Ranch, hang out over there, see if we could protect ourselves with some samurai swords against these aliens, and see if we could capture that on video. He says, I guess once you kill them, they disappear.
Yes.
And that's a great way to cover things up and kind of hide the evidence or your story. What a great story. Like, oh, I killed the alien, but then it disappears afterwards, so you don't have any evidence. Well, maybe we could film the action before he killed the alien and before it disappears, so we have undeniable proof. So we will be covering all aspects of this field, and you just buckle up. Everybody's just going to have to wait and see. And I think a lot of the things that we're going to come across will be just totally unexpected. It'll just kind of fall in our lap.
When it comes to Stardust Ranch, thankfully John Edmonds is an open guy and already said we can go there. And you're absolutely right.
Yep.
The grays do disappear. However, several times there was left evidence of tissue or blood. And at one point he did send the blood to be tested, and some starting results came. But unfortunately that evidence was lost, and the scientist sadly passed away under suspicious circumstances. But the point is I would be very, very eager to go there along with you guys. Going by myself, I don't know if I'd want to, but as long as I got you guys and the cameras, I think we'll be okay there.
Oh, yeah, you got the brothers backing it up. Don't worry about it. We've had our close encounters in our past, and we haven't had any issues. It's been exciting. We've had some extraordinary experiences that are just mind-blowing. And yeah, some people were with us during these times, and their lives changed after the fact in a good way as well. So, if the aliens come around, Dr. J, just let the brothers take care of it. Yeah. and maybe we'll say, hold the camera while me and Brent wrestle this thing down and we capture it and make friends with it. I don't want to hurt it. We don't want to kill it, but we might have to detain it for a little bit. Is that fair?
Oh, completely. I am with you on that one. I'll bring the cuffs for that.
You got the cuffs. All right,
yeah,
cool.
yeah. Austin,
welcome, Dr. J.
Austin Roger asks, Blake, do you think the Greys can control human mind? Or minds, plural.
Yeah, well, obviously, I think I agree. I think they can control minds. Apparently, they control it in a way through telepathic communications. I don't know if that's exactly control or not, but if you heard a telepathic voice in your head trying to communicate with you, and from what I hear when we talk to these abductees, these telepathic communications between these abductees is control in their way, because some of the statements I've heard is they say, like, stay calm, remain calm, so this is some kind of control. Whether it's full mind control, no, but is there a little control via making the abductee feel a little comfortable and put them at an ease of mind? I think there's a little sense of that, but the whole idea of this telecommunication, not telecommunications, but telepathy is something that we might be able to harness afterwards. Obviously, they might have their own version of Neuralink, and they don't need to communicate the way we do verbally, but they could do it through a Neuralink kind of technology, which they probably obviously have.
About 8 years ago, 2013, when we were doing the third documentary we did together remotely, which was really cool how we did the first two Alien Human Project parts 1 and 2, and then followed up with the Alien Abduction Diaries. If you recall, each of those abductees said during those interviews, whether that part was shown in the documentary or not, because obviously there was a lot of footage that we had with them that didn't make the cut. They said that essentially that when they start to hear these messages in their own heads using their own voice with words that they normally wouldn't say, and then are sometimes become paralyzed or move in a way that they feel is out of their control. They leave with that feeling that their muscles and their brain essentially are unlocked, and therefore they are able to reciprocate that communication each time ETs come into contact, whether they be coming from 100 feet or 50 feet. The closer they get, people report that they seem to feel more anxiety. And then, like you said, the ETs always do say, stay calm, we're not going to harm you, etc. And then people are flooded with endorphins and dopamine to keep them essentially calm. So that is something that I think we are capable. And I don't even think we need Neuralink. I think it's just a matter of us finding that something that we may have lost over the past several millennia.
I agree with you. I think maybe they might be even master hypnotists as well. They have their techniques, their subtle ways, their subtle telepathic communications, and it might be just natural to us.
Now,
Yep.
Paper Crane wishes writes, what do you think prevents people from believing? Good question.
That's a great question. I think, everybody's skeptical of things before they have actually had a chance to experience it themselves. And that's human nature, and that's not a bad attribute to be human, to be skeptical. Why do people have a hard time even wanting to believe? They're cynical. They're stuck in their ways. They live into their 9-to-5 job. They really don't care about anything else except, getting by day to day, dealing with their boss. They got a lot of other things on their mind, and whether we're alone or not doesn't even comprehend in some people's minds. They don't even want to think about it. It's not something in their consciousness. They don't ask the big questions. So until they actually experience it themselves, that's when sometimes these people's minds change. But if they never have an experience, people have a hard time believing the evidence, which is amazing to me because the evidence is all over the place. But I think more and more people are realizing, because we could talk about it with people now, where in the past, if we brought up UFOs or technology that seems out of this world, people would kind of roll their eyes and not really respond back. But now when you bring up what's going on with the Pentagon admitting that there's UFOs and they don't know where they're from, at that point there's no argument, because if the Pentagon's admitting it, that there's things in our skies and we don't know where they're coming from, which is, in my opinion, is false. They know exactly where it's coming from, but the fact that the Pentagon's admitting that there's UFOs, there is no denying UFOs anymore. So if you're a denier and you don't want to believe, then you're just disregarding fact.
Now, let me ask you, do you think the reason people are seeing far more now than they've ever seen before is because people have had a lot more time to essentially look and not be stuck in traffic, as here in the capital of traffic, literally Los Angeles, where I'm stuck at the two busiest freeway intersections, the 101 and 405 and 10, literally both being within 15 miles from me. And yet, right now, they're fairly empty, as they've been for the last year. Do you think that has something to do with why people are able to see and capture more and more of these objects in our skies, or landed, or in the water, or going in and out of the water, or things like that, as opposed to before? Or do you think we are genuinely in a wave, as I said earlier?
I think we're in a wave, John, due to the fact that the Space Force is implemented. We're experimenting with craft that hasn't been released to the public, but obviously they got to test it. and the public's eventually going to see it. It's going to be hard to hide now, just due to the fact recently we put out some information we received in regards to this technology coming out of Russia that looks like a Tic Tac, but made for humans to, drive around in. It's not necessarily as fast as the Tic Tac, or it doesn't go underwater, but the technology behind it doesn't need wings, rotor blades. There's a patent on this technology. Real soon, we're going to be seeing these things that look like UFOs. They seem to defy gravity, and at that point, we're going to be. I think it's all coming around the bend that we're all going to be having this technology, and whether it's alien in nature, we really don't care because we're going to be utilizing it, implementing it, and at that point, we're there. Disclosure's there. So I think either Russia's going to put out some technology, and then they're going to come out with their vehicle here next year. They say they're going to release it. They're going to test it, show it to the public. There's going to be massive competition behind this. And at that point, everybody's going to have it.
I have a super chat. I want to throw a shout out to Rockstar. Rockstar, thank you so much for your support of the show in and outside of it. I appreciate it very much for keeping this channel alive, for being able to bring amazing guests to you like the Cousins Brothers today, and more so as I have been and plan on doing so. I got a couple more questions here in the chat. Lasha Senyak asks, why do you think the aliens are coming here? What do they want from us?
What do you think they want from us is the question. It would be like us kind of studying animals in nature. We want to learn. They're probably a curious creature. If they've traveled across the universe or our galaxy to get here, that they have come across a lot of other life forms. And it's basically kind of their duty as possibly interstellar botanists or stewards just to study what's going on in their galaxy. So I think they're just curious beings. What do they exactly want from us? I don't think they really want anything from us. They already got what they need. I think they're just studying us. I don't think there's any agenda that they have that's negative. But, I don't know. I haven't spoken with them. And apparently there's a few species. Some of them are good. Some of them are bad. Obviously, I would think that not all species not of this earth are friendly. It just doesn't work that way. But I would think that if there is an agenda that they have and they wanted something from us, they probably would have already done it. And we just don't know what they did. But maybe they've already done it.
I got another super chat here. Paper Crane Wishes, thank you very much. And that's a really cool super sticker. I want to thank her for that as well. And again, for the support. Another couple questions before we wrap up, before we get some final statements from you. Lasha Senyak asks, why do they think alien technology changes so quickly? Used to be saucers, then triangles. The ships changed to so much. What is that all about?
Yeah, and then they resemble the bell or other kinds of shapes and forms. But it's interesting. It was a classic flying saucer, and now it's moved into the TR-3B, the triangular shape. Now we have the Tic Tac, the gimbal. So why are these craft changing in their ways of design? It's hard to say, but I do have to think about some of the archives that we've been receiving, and it's interesting. Like when you're in South America, the flying saucers still exist, it seems, in South America. You don't see them so much here over the United States like you did in the 50s and 60s, but now they've traveled over to South American region. Not exactly sure the reason why it's specific to that point. And then in America, now we're seeing these Tic Tacs. So I got a feeling we're going to see a lot more Tic Tacs, maybe a little less flying saucers, maybe, how our cars change. Maybe in about 10 to 15 years, our automobiles and our transportation vehicles that we drive in won't even resemble the modern day car. So they might be just continuing to modify their technology, and why not?
Precisely. And you know what? If you go back to cars, say, 100 years ago, they're drastically different than what they look today. Even 30 years ago, they're all very curvy, aerodynamic, not the boxy cars of the 70s and early 80s. So even then, we're starting to see some massive changes. Lasha Senyak asks, have you ever done a documentary on human mutilations?
We kind of want to stay away from that subject matter. I think it's been done. Linda Moulton Howell's the expert on that, so we kind of leave that expertise and that subject matter in her hands.
One final thing, Stargate Traveler. Do you think it's possible the aliens terraformed Earth?
I believe that there's a possibility that aliens probably had something to do with the evolution of human. Maybe they were the ones that maybe have come here long ago. The Anunnaki, the story, the 12th Planet book by Zechariah. A lot of that makes sense. Some of these old Sumerian texts, to me, proves after it's been translated through Sumerian texts that we've had visitation, we've had help, and they were here, and there's some kind of intervention. Whether they terraformed Earth, I don't know if that. I'm not sure on that. I'm more likely to believe that Earth kind of formed naturally, as all planets do in this universe. But I think there was some kind of intervention for the human being itself, because when you look at what we've done as the individual life form on this planet, known as human, and what we've been able to accomplish, and compare it to all the other millions and millions and millions of life forms that have existed on this planet, that we're the only dominating species to able to protect this planet in case of an asteroid strike, where we could shoot out down an asteroid, we could get off this planet. What other animals doing this? There's no comparison. So I think we're real unique. Something happened, and I don't think it was evolution, in my opinion. But hey, I could be wrong.
Now, let's talk about where people can see the documentary Countdown to Disclosure. Of course, I got it on Amazon Prime, and it's actually a really good price out there if you want to own it. Usually it's about it's half the price, more than half the price technically of any documentary, and sometimes even more than that, because some are up to $24.95, and this literally is $9.99 or $9.95 or something like that to buy, under $10, which is pretty amazing to purchase, and to rent it is only $5. So you said iTunes, right? What are the other places people can watch this?
Yeah, we wanted to make it affordable. We didn't want to release it and go, hey, if I want to see this movie, I'm going to have to buy it for $20 or I have to rent it for $20. We wanted to make it affordable, accessible. Obviously, we had to cover our costs. It was a lot of work to put together. But yeah, I think the $5.99 rentals, definitely a fair bargain. You want to purchase it, we got a 4K version of it. We shot it all in 4K. It's a beautiful picture, and you could enjoy it, share it with your friends. It's available on Fandango. It's available on Vudu. It's available on Xbox, Microsoft, iTunes, Google Play, and it has just been made available actually on YouTube. Yes, and Amazon Prime and iTunes. I urge everybody, go check it out. And if you guys could do me a favor, if you watch that movie on Amazon Prime, please go to the comment section. Leave your comment. Give us a rating on the stars. The comments really help to get that algorithm going, especially for Amazon Prime. So those are the places to get Countdown to Disclosure, the secret technology behind the Space Force.
Blake, it's been an incredible time to interview you. It's ironic that I've never had you guys exclusively on this. Usually it's with another guest or so. If you have any final words, what would it be? And also, let me get a quote from Brent as well.
Absolutely. Well, I just wanted to say that we appreciate your correspondence, Dr. J, our friendship that we've had over this decade. And we've got a lot of things to do in the future. So I appreciate your help, Dr. J, getting the word out, having us on your show. I just urge everybody, if you got questions about what's going on with this technology, where is it going, what's the Space Force have to do with it, what does the president know about things, Countdown to Disclosure opens up a lot of information, and you're going to get a lot of answers to your questions. Yeah, Countdown to Disclosure, it's available now. Brent, any words here?
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at a double rainbow outside our deck right now, it's beautiful. But
Yeah, excellent. We are having Dr. J. We got the new panels. This year's looking pretty exciting. We're just getting started. We have the road trip coming up. We have our documentary that actually we're so humbled about how well it's doing right now, and kind of these high expectations. Even the Orchard Entertainment, the president gave our friend Jim Martin, the vice president of the Orchard in 1091, to have him give us a call to congratulate us on how well Countdown to Disclosures perform, and they're totally kind of blown away themselves. So yeah, it's a great time, and we're super excited what's happening right now. And just want to thank you, Dr. J, for being our friend for the past, what is it now, almost a decade?
Yeah, that's right. 9 years in May, coming up soon.
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll make it another decade in the future, so buckle up.
That's right. The ride is just beginning. That's all I have to say. Much, much more to come, of course, from the Cousins brothers. And also, let's tell people a sneak peek about what's going to happen on Third Phase of the Moon tonight.
Well, we don't know if we have an episode tonight, but I urge everybody to go watch our last. If you haven't been there in a few days, we were able to interview John D'Souza, retired FBI agent. You had him on the show. We asked him some great questions. He shared some material with us. We just recently put up some incredible UFO videos that the panel went over. We're going over some information. But as of right now, I don't think we got anything tonight. Brent, we got anything on the burner here? Not at the moment. Nope. Not exactly sure what's going on tonight. But, there's always news. Obviously, we're trying to put something up every day, give you the highest quality production value as far as information, and bring it to you as fast as possible every day on Third Phase of the Moon. It's a challenge, but we love it. Thanks, Dr. J. You be good over there.
Yes, of course. Thank you both. Aloha to you both, and enjoy that amazing rainbow that I unfortunately am not seeing since it's already dusk here in Los Angeles. With that being said, this is Dr. J, host of Dr. J Radio Live. Please hit the like button, subscribe, share this video. Feel free to go through the entire channel. There are hundreds of interviews of people that you definitely know. If there's a ufologist, chances are I have interviewed them at some point, and there are far more to come. I normally don't talk about future guests at all because for fear of them canceling. If I told you Graham Hancock was going to come on last time, then he would have canceled. It would have been unfair to you all, but he ended up coming, if you recall, this past December. So we ended up making that happen. But I can tell you I have someone booked for Thursday, so stay tuned for that. And somebody you've all been asking for to return is going to be set for next week. So everyone stay tuned to this channel and stay tuned to Third Phase of the Moon, and also go to the secondary channel, Third Phase Special Report. And of course, I'll leave the links in the channel. With that being said, this is Dr. J, host of Dr. J Radio Live, of course, with Blake and Brent, cousins of Third Phase of the Moon. Keep your eyes in the sky. We're going to keep bringing intelligence to the discussion. And while that is happening,